Okay. So this is essentially a long Sicha where the Rebbe speaks about different aspects of Yosef and Yehuda. And he speaks about how our parsha speaks about the Yehuda approaching Yosef, who was then the ruler of Mitzrayim, and the special role that Yehuda had, that Yaakov Avinu sent Yehuda to teach before him in Goshen, and similarly, the Haftarah as well indicates the great quality of Yehuda, because it speaks about how later on, when Mashiach comes, the Seres Hashvatim that are represented by Yosef will join with Yehuda. So now he says, what's the specialness of Yosef, or Yehuda versus Yosef? Afal Pi, last paragraph. Afal Pi Yosef Tzaddik. Though Yosef was the ruler over the entire land. This is indicative of the fact that a Yid is the one that rules over the world and the nations of the world that surround him. In other words, he is not beholden to others. He can put forth what he wants and what he desires for the fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs. Harei Aleph Harei Hu Humad Lakach Aide Pari Melch Mitzrayim. Yosef Tzaddik was given this position through Pari, the king of Mitzrayim. So he said, this means to say, she's a kosher im gzeiras hamelach b'chukei hamedim. It's connected with the decree of the king and the laws of the country. So it does have a certain limitation. Actually, the Rebbe earlier in the Sicha went into a whole lengthy thing about by the Suda of Purim, the Suda of Shverish, there was Kirtzayin Ish V'ish, like the will of every single one. Ish V'ish goes on Mordechai and Haman. So this was still under the limitations of what the government had assigned. Even after the appointment of Yosef, Pare said the throne will be greater than the throne of the kingship. Pare said, my throne will be greater than you. This still indicates that in a fine way, he is still connected with the limitations of the world and still connected with the limitations of Mitzrayim. Next page goes on to say, Masha En Kain Hatoikif the Vayigash Elav Yehuda. The power and the strength that Yehuda approached him, that earlier in the Sicha he speaks about how when Yehuda approached Yosef, he approached him with a full force and he was ready to go to war to save Binyamin. He's bate bekach shu nigash leYosef b'li kabolas rishus tchila kanal. It expressed itself by the fact that he approached Yosef without first receiving permission to be able to approach Yosef. Upal Allah, and he affected Yosef. That Yosef could not control himself. This shows on the might and the strength. He doesn't even take consideration, he doesn't give any significance to the way the country is run and the way the world is accustomed to. This means it's a union of two opposites that we spoke about earlier. The union of two opposites means, like he says over there, that the union involves that you have both the level of the, on the one hand, he recognized that Yosef was the leader. On the other hand, he completely comes with a full force to Yosef. And along with the fact that Yehuda knew that he needed Yosef to be able to free Binyamin, till he told Yosef that you are just like Paroi, and therefore, therefore, Yosef, it was in his power to fulfill the request of Yehuda, the Gam, and also included in this, Shalal Yehuda Yosef Yishlach Oisem Lepari Mataina Akis Egloncha. He also negated the possibility of Yehuda telling, of Yosef telling Yehuda, you know what? Go take it up with the boss. Pari is the boss. Pari is Akise Egdol Mecca. His throne is higher than me. You know what? You have a problem? Go take it to the boss. Go take it to Pari. By Yehuda telling Yosef, I'm sorry, by Yehuda telling Yosef, he was telling him, you are with the same strength in my mind like Pari. Still in all, along with the fact that he accepted Yosef as king and so on, he acted with the complete broadness and strength. As if he doesn't need Yosef. Vayigash elav Yehuda in Toikef Yehuda approached him with the full strength. Only after Yehuda approached him. Kiblu as Hakoyach, they received the empowerment Yosef with the assistance of Yosef. Sheyiyah Vayeshev Yisrael Be'eret Mitzrayim Be'eret Goshen Meitav Oves. That Yisrael at the end of our parsha settled in the land of Mitzrayim, the land of Goshen, in the most beautiful place in Mitzrayim. Though we are finding ourselves in the land of Mitzrayim, from the expression of constraints and boundaries, under the kingship and rulership of Pari, it still in all becomes Sham Vayeshev Yisrael Ba'ifin Shal Yeshiva Amitis, becomes that Yisrael settles over there in a true settlement. Yisayim is even more so Vayachzuba, and they held on to it. They used it as a like an inheritance, like a lot of land that belongs to them. They have it like an inherited place of it. Which is a moida alachiza b'toikev. This shows I'm holding on to something with full force. In such a way they become in control and ruling over it. To such a degree that they will be fruitful and multiply very much in a way that's beyond measure and bound. This brings immediately to what it says that Yaakov lived in the land of Mitzrayim for 17 years. That in Mitzrayim he has good years, good life. 17 is the numerical equivalent of good. The Chaim Amitim and true life, the Ruchnis, the Gashmias, spiritually and physically. Therefore, we said, Tuvan Gama Shaykhs Vayigash Elav Yehuda, Im David Avdi Nasilam Va'olam. Would this be understood? The connection between, and Yehuda approached him with what it says, David, my servant, will be a leader over them forever, which is the end of the Haftarah. The power and strength of Yehuda approaching Yosef. It comes through his connection. Meaning his connection with Hashem, which comes through his accepting and having bittul to Hashem. Beyond the way the world is run. As it will become revealed when Mashiach comes, that the connection of a Yid with Hashem is beyond any type of limitation. It's beyond any type of worldliness. This bond that a Yid has with Hashem, this Haidah, Yehuda from the word Haidah, admitting and bittul that a Yid has to Hashem, that is the preparation that gives us the empowerment for actually bringing about the true and complete redemption. she'az yizgala b'tach shashlemis b'chol ha'olam kuloi toikiv David Avdi Noslam Lo'olam. Then will become revealed in the utmost manner in the entire world the power and strength that David, my servant, will be a leader over them forever. Hakosher l'shleimus ha'toikiv shel HaKadosh Baruch, that is connected with the ultimate and the complete power of Hashem. Skip the parentheses. Kach is a poil gamal kol ha'umas, to such a degree this affects all the nations. V'yedu hagoyim, and the nations will know ki ani Hashem, that I am Hashem. Psak in the Rambam, like the ruling of the Rambam, Shemelach HaMashiach Yilchem Milchemes Hashem Chulu, that the King Mashiach will fight the wars of Hashem. V'nitzach kol ha'umas sh'svivo, and he will defeat all the nations that are around him. Will poil on the effects sh'az efach alam safa brur likrei kulam Hashem Hashem lov yishchem efach, and the effect that then I will transform the nations to have a clear language that all should call out in the name of Hashem, and they should all serve Him as one. Like it's explained in many places, that this power for the revelation of David, my servant, will be a leader for them forever. Milos Yehuda comes from the fact that prior to this, it started off with Yehuda approaching. Initially, Yehuda needs to approach Yosef and receive from Yosef. And then through that becomes revealed the advantage and the height of Yehuda. David Abdi and David, my servant, will be a leader for them forever. The Rebbe compares it. Mamar Chassidus speaks about this, has to do with saying Gal Yisrael, going straight from that Shemoneh Esrei. But let's skip to the last two lines in this column. Umashu Zokuk Elav, and I'm sorry. Let's go to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines from the end of this paragraph. According to the above, we can add Vayigash Elav Yehuda Mudgish, that when Yehuda approached Yosef, is emphasized. In addition to the bittul and the acceptance of Yosef, Gam ubeikar hatoikiv shel Yehuda mitzad malosei al Yosef. Also, and primarily, the strength of Yehuda. Why does Yehuda have the strength? Because an advantage that he has over Yosef. The fact that Yehuda needs Yosef, Yosef enables Yehuda to reveal his power and his strength the way it can be when Mashiach comes. And here we're going to come to the practical application these days. According to this will be understood also the teaching and the lesson from Vayigash of Yehuda also in our generation, our period of time. Standing immediately before the true and complete redemption. Despite the strength of Yehuda in his time. Mordechai in his time, because as I said before, the Rebbe spoke earlier in the Sicha about Mordechai and Kirtzayni Shvi'ish and the power that they had under Achashverosh's rule. And so too the power of tzaddikim and Yidden in all generations. Still in all, despite all the power that they had, in all generations, there were limitations from outside, from the perspective of the nations of the world, and because of the decrees against the Jewish people, heaven forbid it shouldn't come ever again. That not always the nations of the world allow the Yidden to act with the full force and independence. As opposed to this generation and this time. We see in actuality that It doesn't exist the disturbances from the nations as it was in the past. The nations of the world allow Yidden to act according to their wishes. Therefore, the matter is only dependent upon the will of the Jewish people, that they should hold on to it and they should be fruitful and multiply very much, as it is customary in actuality in many different places, in kol hatoykif abreikait with a whole full strength and broadness and broad-shoulderedness. And he explains, both in this country, the United States, which the Rebbe and the Frierdiker Rebbe called a government of kindness, that allows Jewish people to act according to their decision by their own choosing. And similar to this in many, many different countries in the world where they allow Yidden to act this way. In the latter years, this was in 1992, end of 1991, we see how even in countries that there were many limitations. He's referring to the former Soviet Union and the communist bloc and so on. It fell and ceased to be all these limitations like we spoke about many times. Adra, even more so. Not only are Yidden free to do and act as they wish, Eliyisedem is even more so. The governments of the nations of the world assist, and they give different types of assistance to Jewish schools and parochial schools and hot lunches like they have in New York, and buses in New York, or in Florida they give a credit, whatever it's called, the school credit of $3,000 per child, and so on. In addition to the fact that Yidden can act and follow through the ways of Torah mitzvahs in their own 4 cubits, as it's called, their own private domain, we see in actuality in the latter years, it becomes easier and easier to affect this idea that they settle it, and they settle the land at all the edges of the earth. Why? Since the entire world, not only Jews, also the nations of the world, who is a vessel. The nations of the world and the world at large is a vessel and a vehicle to receive and accept the ideas of Yiddishkeit, Torah, mitzvahs, what are they accepting? What are they holding by? Zayin mitzvahs b'nei Noach. They are ready to receive the 7 Noach commandments. And to such a degree, if you should duber v'oidedu kama pam lachreina, like we've spoken about, and we were inspiring people many times lately, according to what my father-in-law, the leader of our generation, let us know. We already concluded all the preparations for the redemption. And now all we have to do is to draw down the Geulah in actuality, in the physicality and the materialism of the world. The materialism that is created by the physical, that should be revealed to eyes of flesh. So the Rebbe goes on to explain the brackets, despite the powerful service of the Yidden, the way they are in exile, even the way they are found in exile in a state where spiritually they are redeemed, meaning spiritually they are free. This is still not yet the perfection of the simple meaning of the redemption. The Geulah mamish actually revealed in the physical world. Yeshnam adayin kol ha'agbolos de golos. There's still all the limitations of the exile. And they are called banim shegolim al shulchan avim. They're like children that were exiled from their father's table. Koilol, including the fact zeh shebnei Yisrael hinam betkufa zuka gunnar achman l'slan, that Yidden in this situation are considered like an aguna. An aguna is a woman who was, her husband deserted her without giving her a get. Shabayla Kadosh Baruch Hu halach l'mdinas hayam, that her husband, which the husband of the Jewish people is Hashem, it's as if he traveled across the sea. La'achrei ha'erusin, after their betrothal, which is B'yetzias Mitzrayim, we would consider betrothed to Hashem. Va'ad sheyu anasuyin, until it will be the marriage, the completion of the marriage, which is Geulah mitzvah shleima, the true and complete redemption. So we're like an in-between place that we're waiting for the Geulah. So we can't be in such a way that we are happy until the Geulah comes. We have to want the Geulah to come immediately. Today we only need to open our eyes, and then we will see how the entire world demands. The world is demanding that every Yid should be in the state of situation of the true and complete redemption. And therefore, via Shloimar, we could say, this itself is the reason for the fact that today we see how Yidden can stand in matters of Judaism with the whole strength and power, even over the nations of the world. All that matters is the will of the Yid to do so. Since we're standing immediately before the redemption, that by the redemption will become revealed. In actuality, how David, my servant, will be a leader over them forever. And the nations will know that I am Hashem. That's why this is mirrored in the situation of our generation. That even in our generation, before the Geulah actually came, but we're on the threshold of Geulah, we already have this type of feeling as a preparation that will bring us directly to the true and complete redemption through Mashiach. And to add, this is also hinted in what it says that Yehuda approached him in addition to the assistance of the powerful avodah of Yosef of our generation. Who's the Yosef of our generation? My father-in-law was called by the name Yosef Yitzchak. There's also that Yehuda will approach him. In other words, the coming of Mashiach immediately. David, my servant, will be a leader of them forever. This comes by an assistance and empowerment of the Yosef of our generation, because Yosef is like you, like Parai, which Parai in the spiritual realm shows on a very high level. Parai, the Kedusha, the Parai of holiness, this Pariu, this Galiu, that says about Parai of Kedusha, that it's opened up and revealed from him all lights. From this is understood also the teaching for our generation. Through acting in such a way of how Yehuda approached Yosef, we show in matters of Yiddishkeit the full force and strength and independence of being a Yid. Because for the sake of the Yidden the world was created. This itself brings the idea of that he's that David, my servant, will be a leader for them for all time. So the Rebbe is going to connect it now with the idea. This Farbrengen was said on Zion Tevis within 3 days of the Yom Tov of Hey Tevis. That Hey Tevis was the day when the federal court that Rebbe brings out. In other words, the court of the strongest nation in the world, the United States, said and released the Sfarim and said that the Sfarim should be returned to where they're supposed to be. So therefore, this also is a strengthening for that those Sfarim that are still trapped in behind the Iron Curtain, that was getting a little bit easier things, should also be redeemed and brought to its correct place. So the Rebbe is saying, I just skipped over a few paragraphs. What does this have to do with us? There's the redemption of this farm that took place, and there's the redemption of this farm that still needs to take place. My top of the second paragraph in page 75. My yochel kolechem ve'echad lasus lepoil de lazaris apidyon v'ashovish al svarim b'aktzovim. What can each and every one do in actuality to cause the quickening of the redemption and the return of the svarim and the manuscripts? Hatshuva lakach pshuta. The answer for this is simple. Through the fact that each and every man and woman, men, women, and children, should do something similar to this. He should bring to his home new svarim in words of Torah. In addition to the svarim that he has previous to this in his house full of svarim, and then he says, these days it's very easy to accomplish this, because every week new matters in Torah are printed. Whether things that are something that are truly new, or if they're being reprinted again, and sometimes even a better print than before. The Meila Reza Dover Kal Svarim, therefore it's very easy to buy the Svarim. And therefore we can add more and more in the receiving and in purchasing of Svarim. And then the Rebbe continues to the top. Let's go to the top of page 76. The Chol Azar is the second paragraph from the top. The Chol Azar is whoever is doing this in more and sooner and in a way of quickness. He's praiseworthy. That they should already accept upon themselves the good resolutions right now. Fulfill this as soon as possible after Shabbos, when the Rebbe, I think, said this, to do it as soon as possible after Shabbos. Also, by becoming like part of a book club, they did a situation where you joined. Kahos had a book club, I don't know if they still have it, where automatically they would send you any new svarim from Kahos. Skip the parentheses. Whoever belongs to this book club, they receive the new sefer as soon as it comes out. Also, it's appropriate and right to use out this custom that you didn't have, to give holy books that were printed already as gifts to others, including also young children. Let's say you give it to them for a certain celebration, let's say birthday or something else, or before a Yom Tov, etc., you'll give them some svarim. Here also should be the will of Hashem, for each one expanding his activities in receiving new svarim. This will quicken and speed up even more so the fulfillment of the promise and actuality that Yehuda approached him in what he was doing. He was also trying to redeem. He was trying to redeem Binyamin. All the svarim and all the manuscripts of our Rebbeim, our leaders, Return to their true location. Base Rabbeinu Shem Bavel, the house of our Rebbe, that's in Bavel, which is a nickname that Rebbe used for 770. The Gematir Paratzta, 770 is the numerical equivalent of the word Paratzta, means spreading out or bursting forth. The Sham Yitztarfu L'chol Asfarim by Savim Shabbasein Yisayenu, over there, it will become combined and added to all those Sfarim and all those manuscripts of our Rebbeim that are presently there. Take it from a yad yavi pidin shvuim za atzmis a pidin shvuim shekol nitzitak b'shul ba'olam. Immediately, this pidin shvuim, this redemption of the captives, of those farim that are still in captivity, will bring with it the redemption of the captives of all the godly sparks that are in the world. So, in other words, the Rebbe is saying like this: we can cause the redemption of all the captive sparks in the world. When we purchase Sfarim, we are bringing that the Sfarim, we are bringing closer that the Sfarim of the Rabbeim should be redeemed from their captivity. And by the Sfarim of the Rabbeim being brought out of their captivity, this is bringing that all captive sparks should come out. But take from Yad Mamish, immediately, Mamish, Holchim, Kol Yehudim, all the Jews go, Ben Areinu, V'Skenenu, and our youth, and our elderly, B'Manenu, B'Naseinu, with our sons and daughters, the Kasvam, Mazahavam, Itam, their silver and gold with them, including all this farm and all their manuscripts, to the Holy Land, to the base of Migdash, to the third base of Migdash, to the Holy of Holies, over there is what's called the Even Hashtia, the rock upon which the Aron was placed. Beli Shinui, the Even Hashtia was unchanged, Mizman Brias Olam, from the time of the creation of the world. The Cholza takes me out mamish. All of this should be immediately, right now.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi Geulah.